Grass. Milk. Cheese.
Beautiful.
What would happen if French government banned raw milk?
Révolution.
We still are highly regulated as raw milk cheesemakers.
I think it's a problem if I'm the last one. If I stop, these products will disappear.
There is an existential threat to small farms.
I think there is a battle out there. As a young American entrepreneur, I'd like to say I'm up for the fight.
They're brilliant, and they want to be better every day.
We make it because it's beautiful and it's something that's real. It behooves us to make something that nobody else can make.
Something new is waiting to be born.
On the outskirts of Australia's capital, Canberra, there's an office block with just 120 bureaucrats. This is Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, FSANZ, a clumsy acronym housed here in this double-jointed 4-storey building. The people here are responsible for the safety of every bit of food that is eaten in Australia and New Zealand. And it's not just food produced here, but also food that is imported. This building contains no laboratory scientists. Nothing is tested here. This is a place of assessment. Data is gathered and decisions are made. In their hands is the responsibility for the safety of all the food that Australia produces and everything that we eat. Well, almost. Nick Haddow is in the food business. He runs the Bruny Island Cheese Company. He's also a brewer, a winemaker, and a businessman.
That's about right, I reckon.
But at heart, he is a cheesemaker.
I'm passionate about cheese making, so therefore I'm passionate about making raw milk cheeses.
He was awarded Telstra Australian Business of the Year in 2014, has written a couple of books, won a James Beard Food Award in America. He is the chair of Brand Tasmania, on the board of Wine Tasmania, and he's pretty handy with a hose. For a bloke with a big resume, Nick Haddow likes small. Things on the artisan scale, handmade.
So my dream for this farm is it to be a showcase of how good small dairy farming can be. To me, cheese making is what happens in the paddock and the maturation room.
But in Australia, cheese is also what happens in Canberra. Cheese is food, and the rules state that cheese must be made according to the regulations laid out by FSANZ. And FSANZ get an attack of the vapours the moment you suggest making a traditional cheese from raw milk. Why? Well, they're also not keen on talking about what they do. But after many requests for an interview, they did send us an email. It's a massive responsibility. And when it comes to cheese, FSANZ standards make it almost impossible to make raw milk cheese in Australia. It's a responsibility that does not extend to enforcing those standards. They're a bit like the Parliament of Food. They make the rules for others to police. Raw milk cheese is just that, made from milk that's not been treated to kill the naturally existing bacteria and microbes. Given that the human body houses about 40 trillion bacteria, it's lucky that the vast majority of them are helpful, not harmful. In fact, we couldn't live without bacteria. One of the jobs that Fazan's has is to make sure that pathogenic bacteria, the bad bacteria, don't turn up in harmful numbers in the food we eat.
There are risky foods, and I've devoted my career to try and improve the safety of foods. And let's deal with legitimate risks.
Dr. Kathy Donnelly is one of the world's leading cheese microbiologists.
And let's not try and banish products based on, potential for concern. Let's deal with real concerns. Depending on how you're going to use that product, milk for cheese making versus milk for fluid consumption, they're kind of two different animals, right? And so the beneficial organisms that we value for cheese making, a lot of those come from the forage from pastures that animals graze on. When you house animals, they don't get out on pasture, they're fed formulated feeds. You get a different microflora in that kind of product. But, I think the attention paid to animal health, you look at what motivated pasteurization standards in the beginning. Milk was a filthy product. People were getting tuberculosis and scarlet fever and diphtheria. And so we've worked on vaccination of animals, cleaning up how we house, feed, care for these animals, and it's made a big difference in public health.
This despite the fact that raw milk cheese has a very good safety record in countries like France, England, and America. Under Fazan's regulations, nearly all the cheese made in Australia must be made from pasteurised milk, putting safety before flavour. The argument actually goes deeper than that. There is no doubt artisan raw milk cheese tastes better than its pasteurised cousin. But what are the risks? And why is it that we can import raw milk cheese into Australia, cheese that we're not allowed to make here? It makes absolutely no sense. But in Australia, in 2022, it did become possible to eat some imported raw milk cheese from the UK. This despite Fazan's tough stance on letting Australians eat raw milk cheese. In the middle of this regulatory mess, a lawyer.
Yeah, my name is Chris Preston. I've been involved in food regulation and compliance for over 30 years.
And regulation and compliance is a very complicated business. Because while Food Standards Australia and New Zealand sets the rules, they have none of the responsibility of enforcing them.
The laws are enforced by states and territories, but Fazan's is essentially the one that writes the rules. Also for imports, we've got like the Commonwealth Department of Agriculture, which deals with both quarantine and food laws. So it's a bit of a complicated system. But Fazan's is the cog at the centre of the wheel. It's all very complicated because while it's called a production standard, it also deals with the finished product. So we've got this strange mix of state laws, government bodies making laws, quarantine laws, and it all just ties in together in a spaghetti-like mash.
So why can't we make and eat the same raw milk cheese as they do in France, or England, or America?
Oh, look, to be honest, Fazan's isn't greatly concerned with industry outcomes. That's not their brief. Their brief is safety. And that's why the mere sniff of unpasteurised cheese gives them the willies. I think part of it is that those in charge of the system, including the appeals system, are perhaps a bit more concerned with the easy solution than the right solution.
So as our milk gets cleaner, does this mean we need fewer regulations, less oversight by the various levels of government?
So when I started making cheese on Bruny Island Cheese Company, one of my objectives was to make raw milk cheese. Now that was a tough conversation to have with the regulators. But I was very, very lucky in that being in Tasmania, we have quite close relationships. We're a small community. The regulating authority, which in Tasmania is called the Tasmanian Dairy Industry Authority, were at least happy to have the conversation with me about it. And over the course of, it took 4 years and took a bunch of money and hundreds of wheels of C2 that had to be thrown out because they were made illegally and therefore unfit for human consumption. You know, that was a process that I was willing to undertake. At the moment, we have to take them around.
When it goes down. What Nick Haddow does with his raw milk C2 was a first. Using raw milk, but cooking the curd at 48 degrees centigrade, and then maturing the cheese for 120 days, and making sure that it has a moisture content of less than 38%. This process ties up a lot of money, a lot of shelf real estate, and explains why most artisanal cheese made in Australia are soft, quick turnaround pasteurised milk cheeses. It means that with the cost of producing, testing and storage, in the shop C2 costs around $120 a kilo.
The name itself, raw milk C2, it actually tells you a lot about what it's going to taste like. C2 stands for cooked curd, means that the curd is heated up only to about 48 degrees, but at that temperature the sugar starts to caramelise. That's really important for us to make cheeses that reflect very much where they come from. My dream for this farm is it to be a showcase of how good small dairy farming can be. So using breeds of cows that are not really considered commercial anymore, using as much native pasture as possible, using unpasteurized milk, creating our own starter cultures from that milk, and then using indigenous microflora to mature the cheese as well.
So is this the famous James Bond?
007 on the tag.
What sort of cow's this?
This is the Australian Dairy Shorthorn. So she was one of the first cows to be born on this property, so raised by hand.
So friendly.
She's super friendly. She'll lick you to death if you're not careful. She quite likes jeans.
Oh, yeah?
The texture.
Nice. And she is one of 3 carefully chosen breeds here. Australian Dairy Shorthorns, Brown Swiss and Normands.
And if you take a farm like ours, it's a tiny little dairy farm and we're a tiny little cheese maker.
Back at the start, Nick sought out a young gun farm manager, Richard Butler. The UK Young Dairy Farmer of the Year, a guy with a new view of dairy.
Yeah, it's trying to get our animals to work for us in a way where they're improving the ground without having to get in there with machinery and chemicals and synthetic fertilisers and things like that. The proof is in the pudding, you know, like I'm constantly getting asked questions of what brand of fertiliser I'm using, why I'm growing more grass, and it's all down to grass and management, and the girls do a lot of that work for us, yeah.
And how important in all this is the actual raw milk?
To me, milk from the supermarket's white water. There's no flavour in it at all. Whereas ours is full of flavour, and it's not one flavour because it changes throughout the year depending on what we've got going on in our pasture.
So these days, Nick makes 3 raw milk cheeses: Raw Tom, Raw George, and the original C2. It seems that all the raw milk cheese Nick Haddow makes are cast in his own image. Big, muscular, burly cheeses, full of flavour. And this is the cheese that all the fuss is about. C2, Australia's first modern raw milk cooked curd cheese. Looks like cheddar, tastes like, well. I love actually joining the dots because they make sense. Like, these cheeses make sense. The taste of place is here. And so when you taste them in situ, they come alive.
And there's something, you know, you can draw a line between the 3 of them. This is our raw milk C2.
The famous, or infamous.
Infamous, yeah.
The one that changed the world for Tasmania.
Well, It's like going on a bit of a journey when you try this cheese, because you get that, being a cooked curd, you get that slight caramelization up front. That's what I get first. That sweetness, but it always reminds me a bit of, do you ever have baked onions with your Sunday roast?
Yeah, get that.
You know, the kind of caramelization of the sweet onion, so it's both a sort of a savoury and sweetness at the same time. And that sweetness, that upfront sweetness sort of then moves into a savouriness. And you know what I was saying before about complex layers of flavour in unpasteurised milk cheeses? That's what I'm talking about. Like, whereas you taste other cheeses, pasteurised milk cheeses, what you end up tasting is kind of the same as what you started tasting. It's a...
If you count 1 to 10, by the time you get to 10, nothing's really changed.
Nothing's changed or nothing's left, you know? Whereas this, you know, like it's unpacking itself in my mouth as I talk. And, you know, it's as strong now as it was when I put it in my mouth.
You know what else I get with that is I get a real grassy pasture flavour through it too. I don't want to say earthy, but that sounds wrong. It's definitely pasture. It's just definitely green grass in there.
Plenty of that here.
Yeah. That's fantastic. According to Fazan's, if you can meet their standards, then you can make raw milk cheese. But the standards are almost impossible to meet. It would be easier for the cow to jump over the moon. In 2023, in Australia, across all foods, Fazan's issued just 93 food recalls. And there are only 2 dangerous food incidents, one involving poppy seeds and the other spinach. So all up, Australia's food is really safe.
Most people will tell you raw milk cheese is unsafe, and then a bunch of other people will tell you raw milk cheese tastes better. I actually don't believe either of those things. I certainly don't believe that raw milk cheese is unsafe. And I will, any day of the week, tell you that the raw milk cheese that we make, the raw milk C2, is by far the safest product that we make. It's the little stinky washed rinds, you know, they're like a bloody agar plate for bacteria to grow, and they're the ones that keep me awake at night, not the raw milk cheese. So to say that all raw milk cheeses are unsafe is just wrong, scientifically wrong. To say that they've got better flavour, I don't believe that either. It's like saying organic apples taste better. We've all had some rubbish organic apples in our time.
So logically, the answer lies, as it does with almost all food, in the way the cheese is made and the way it's matured. Ivan Larcher is a Frenchman. He spends part of the year in Castlemaine, the old gold mining town 120 kilometres northwest of Melbourne. He is a cheesemaker at the Castlemaine Cheese School, and he's on a mission to improve Australia's artisan cheesemaking.
We all want our cheese to taste unique. And this uniqueness will come from the milk diversity, the living ecosystem, or the microbiome, bacteria, yeast, and molds and viruses that we'll have in the milk. As a cheesemaker, ideally, we would do everything we can to preserve what we have in the milk. I'm looking for milk with some identity, with some life, with some diversity of bacteria, some diversity of components in terms of proteins, fatty acids, and everything that will be transferred to the cheese and that will create those great aromas that we can find at the end. And this is where we'll have a big challenge in Australia, is to change the way that the milk is being produced. We don't want volume of milk at the end of the day. We want quantity of cheese and quantity of good cheese at the end of the day. Unfortunately, in here, the regulation says that we have to pasteurize. So we have to shoot ourselves in the foot every morning that we start to make cheese by destroying those guys that were supposed to help us to make flavors, aromas, and identity and unique product.
Ivan Larcher has made cheese from unpasteurised milk, but to do it commercially is just not viable. The cost of testing each small batch makes no sense. But there is another way. So you could make a starter culture from raw milk?
Correct.
And then introduce it to your
And
pasteurized
then
milk.
you re-inject it to your pasteurized milk, so you recolonize the milk with your farm spirit and I call it farm juice, because that's really the extract of the farming system.
What worries me about that is what happens in the future when we want a genuine taste of place.
Yes, but in this case, we have to make sure that the cultures that we're using, they are genuine from here, and they are not from anywhere in Europe. Otherwise, we are going to recreate a Gruyere or a Comté or an Emmental or a Camembert, and this is absolutely not what we want to do. The best way will be to have a generation of farmers and cheesemakers that start to work together to produce the milk and make the cheese, and then together we'll have the synergy to challenge the raw milk regulation.
Challenging the raw milk regulations? Easy to say. I tried. Sad story. Back in 1998, the then National Food Authority banned the production, sale and import of all raw milk cheese. But when people realised that benchmark cheese like Parmigiano Reggiano, Grana Padano, Gruyere, Emmental and Comté were raw milk cheeses and would be banned, cheese lovers were furious. What to do? The ban sparked a major diplomatic row. The Swiss challenged the ban, the Italians joined them, and Australia caved in. The food authorities created a special exemption for imported raw milk, hard-cooked curd cheese with a low moisture content. It just seemed stupid and made no allowance for local cheesemakers. So I decided to test the system by importing Roquefort, a French soft blue cheese made from raw milk. But the cheese was locked up, and I was branded a cheese terrorist.
For the past 18 months in a cold room by the Melbourne docks, 80 kilograms of expensive French cheese has sat, ageing ungracefully, as a war was waged about its future. The consignment was denied entry into Australia because the cheese is made from unpasteurized milk, breaching the Food Standards Code.
Okay, so this is a bit of a tangled story, because today we can import Roquefort into Australia, but we can't make similar delicious raw milk blue cheese here. It's prohibited, but not its French grand-père.
Today, after months spent challenging Australia's food safety rules, the Melbourne-based importer was forced to back down, and the French fromage was farewelled with full honours.
I accept it. We may have lost the battle, but I certainly haven't lost the lust to sort this one out. I've been fighting for raw milk in Australia for the last 10 years, and I'm not about to give up now.
Will Studd's one-man crusade to allow soft cheeses made from unpasteurised milk to be sold in Australia was dealt a serious blow today. The cheese importer has been fighting Food Standards Australia after authorities refused to allow this consignment of Roquefort cheese into the country.
The ban didn't make sense then, and it doesn't make sense now. And, okay, the trial and burial got a lot of attention, but I lost the case and the appeal. And despite it all, the arguments, it turns out, had nothing to do with food safety or science. It was all about trade diplomacy, geographical indicators, and state regulations. At least the Australian quarantine sent someone to the funeral. It turned out that the ban was a challenge to the World Trade Organization regulations, and so Australian and French authorities agreed to a review. 18 months later, Fazan's published a 189-page report on why Roquefort was safe and granted it a special exemption. They also agreed to review the science and develop local production standards to ensure a level playing field. Now, more than a decade and several reviews later, Australian cheesemakers can finally make hard-cooked curd cheese from raw milk. As for raw milk blues like Roquefort, Fazan says the science says no. The one thing that is common to both the raw milk cheesemakers and most artisan cheesemakers is commitment and passion. The most interesting Australian cheeses are small batch, handmade, artisan cheese with a point of difference. And most of them are made from pasteurised milk.
The Australian dairy industry is becoming much more industrialised than it ever used to be. Once upon a time, there were something like 22,000 dairy farmers, and today, 20 years later, there are a little more than 5,000. But I think it need not be the case that small dairy farms, which were the backbone of many rural farming communities in Australia, need to close their farm gate because they don't have enough cows. Small dairy farmers with less than 200 are perfect candidates to brand their own milk, make yoghurt, make some cheese. Raw milk cheeses are really best made by farmhouse cheesemakers.
And Michael does have a point. For hundreds of years, that's how cheese got made. It was a farmhouse product.
People that milk their own animals and make their own cheese on site.
Michael and Cressida have literally bet the farm on making raw milk sheep's cheese. 13 years ago, they bought 200 acres in what they call the green heart of the southern Highlands, south of Sydney.
Jumping from corporate life into this life of a farmhouse cheesemaker has been incredible because we've had to learn 3 different disciplines. The science of cheese making, the science of agriculture, and also animal husbandry. Being a farmhouse cheesemaker seems like a pretty simple life. It's actually really complex, and we never stop learning and we never stop feeling challenged.
It was always going to be a big challenge. In New South Wales, they were the first to have a go at making raw sheep's milk cheese. They run a single herd of East Frisian sheep. And as their milk changes with the seasons, so does the cheese they make.
We make a small range of cheeses here at Pecora Dairy. We've created those that really suit our milk and also suit the area that we're in. So the lovely lactic cheeses that we've got, the bloomy and the curly red, are suited to that beautiful spring milk that comes through. And then we've got our luscious blue, which is particularly good in the autumn where the solids are high in the milk and the fat's rising, and that cheese becomes really creamy and beautiful.
So in 2015, the Australian federal regulator, FSANS, made it legal to make raw milk cheese. But unless you had a small fortune, there was very little chance that you could actually satisfy all the regulatory hoops that you had to go through. At times it's been frustrating because the state food authorities commissioned a whole bunch of science but were still fearful of the implementation of what the science was telling them.
It's what we've said time and time again in this series. There's no point in doing the science if you're not going to trust the results.
I think the Australian industry is right on the precipice of something really transformative. Raw milk cheese is definitely something that's worth fighting for in this country. It's authentic and it's unique. It expresses the complete farming system and it's a counterpoint to the increasing industrialisation of dairy across the world. We really are tapping into that movement where people want to know where their produce comes from and they do want to make meaningful purchases of authentic, genuine product.
Burke Brandon is another raw sheep's milk cheesemaker whose Prom Country farm is located in Gippsland, Victoria. In this area, cows produce almost a quarter of Australia's milk, 2 billion gallons of it every year. Once covered in dense forest, these hills are now a blanket of dairy. The forest sadly reduced to serving as windbreaks. From the beginning, Burke Brandon was a standout. In the land of the cows, he made sheep's milk cheese.
So with cheese making, the artistic side is the creative and the expressive part, but to get there you need to bring some science into it to be technically accurate and to have some consistency in your product.
When we're making raw milk cheese, so I'm just bringing everything together from the environment, which is showcased in the milk, and really I'm just working with nature and guiding nature into the kind of cheese that we want to make. With the sheep milk. It's kind of a chance for me as a cheesemaker to connect with the milk.
And connect he did. When I first tasted his raw milk Voyart Reserve, I thought it was one of Australia's best cheeses.
You know, after 20 years cheese making, we've tried most of the things we've thought of, and the raw milk cheese is the culmination of all that.
The killer for Burke was that being a raw milk cheese, the rules forced him to test every batch. And with 90 sheep, those batches were not that big. A total of between 20 and 30 kilos a day. The cost of that testing worked out to be $20 to $25 a kilo. So, after all those years of building, Burke sold out. Sort of.
It's a sensational cheese, I've got to say that. And this really reflects a sense of place to me. So I'm devastated to hear they're going to probably stop making it.
Nothing to do with the cheese itself. We're perfectly happy with how the cheese works out. It's just logistics of running a cheese business.
The only way out was to sell. Not a bad deal when the buyer is Daniel Hales, a fifth-generation dairy farmer with a passion for raw milk cheese. But cheese made from cow's milk. So Burke will stay on as cheesemaker, and the new venture will get its milk from here, Daniel's dairy farm, Glen, Voyart, just up the road on Lance Creek.
So that's why we're looking to do the cow's milk now as the next step in the journey, our raw milk journey. That's the direction we're going.
The Hales family have been here for more than 150 years. But it's doubtful whether his great-grandfather would recognise Daniel's modern setup.
I think we've got about 110 milkers at the moment. We're milking off probably a 300-acre milking platform. We're 430 acres all up, but we have young stock in that on farm as well. And it's a low-stress environment that the cows seem to thrive and prosper in, and that's where the quality milk comes from, we believe.
And these cows, I can't see a Holstein anywhere. What are they?
Well,
what sort of breed?
These are an Ayrshire Jersey cross with a bit of dairy short on through them. They did come from a predominantly Holstein herd about 10 years ago. And then we used Ayrshires and Jerseys over the top of them to end up with sort of a mixed breed herd that seems to suit our farming.
A farming place with a couple of unusual looks. These are Daniel's weed control unit. Camels.
Yeah, we've got 3 camels that roam around. We've got 130 acres of natural bush here. So the camels wander around and they help keep control of the thistles and the ragwort and just general weeds. It's a low impact system on weed control, and it's nice to have some camels for something different, I suppose.
Who would have thought camels would eat ragwort, eh?
Yeah, I know. Well, we didn't either. We were told they wouldn't eat it, but then it turns out they did.
Ragwort is an invasive weed that is toxic to animals. Looks pretty, but a real pest. Sometimes called stinking willy, farweed, or mare's fart. But camels love it. The second of Daniel's unusual touches is his fertiliser.
Well, what we do for our low input system, the idea is we try and keep everything as a closed system, so everything we do here stays on farm. So we don't buy in any fertilisers, any feed. So to counteract that, we've got 4 worm farms and produce about 5,000 litres of worm juice a year out of them that we spray on the pastures annually.
That's pretty original. Where'd you get that idea from?
Well, I was buying worm juice in and then I thought, well, if they can make it, why can't I?
It works. Just look at the pasture and the cows. This one simply plonked herself in between us for most of our chat. Friendly and maternally protective.
I'm passionate about it and I like producing a top quality product that people respect and understand, and I find the system's a bit broken and I can't see it getting any better.
It seems counterintuitive, but Daniel is betting on a smaller system to avoid going broke.
On a property of our size with our milking platform, we should be milking somewhere between the vicinity of 400 to 500 cows in a high input system.
And you're milking?
110.
So these cows, they're living in luxury.
Yeah, and I think you can see that in the shiny coats, the pleasant nature of them. There's no offensive nitrate smells. Well, the cows are just doing what they're meant to do, turning grass into top quality product.
And then into Prom Country cheese. The 110 cows on Glen Voyart farm could hide here unnoticed on what is one of Australia's biggest dairy operations. 18,000 cows spread across 7,062 hectares in the northwestern corner of Tasmania, bigger than some countries. At its height, the historic Van Diemen's Land Company covered 58,000 hectares. The original idea was to make money in the wool market. It was a failure. What is left of that venture sits somewhat beautifully along the Tasmanian coast. By 2016, the huge farm's New Zealand owners sold Woolnorth to a Chinese businessman, Qingfang Lu, for $280 million. It became VDO. The idea was to supply the booming Chinese market with fresh milk and dairy. The sale was controversial and the business did not run smoothly. In April 2018, 5 board members and their CEO resigned, and the company was dogged with accusations of animal maltreatment. This is farming on a factory scale and about as far away as you can get from Daniel Hales and his cows.
What we're seeing around the world and in Australia is an increasing scale of production. For dairy production specifically, what we're seeing is a decrease in the number of farms overall and an increase in the number of cows on those farms. In terms of the amount of milk that each cow produces, that's also gone up exponentially. 40 years ago, maybe we were looking at 2,000 litres a year, whereas now it could be 6,000 to 7,000 litres a year per cow. We need to be breeding for longevity and robustness, not just to produce a milking machine that might break down in 2 or 3 years. That's simply not fair to the animal.
At least here in Australia, the animals are outside all year round, and that does mean they get to graze on pasture. But on farms of this scale, pasture is not enough. These cows are Friesian Holsteins, the dairy super cow. In America, this breed produces an average of just over 10,000 litres of milk a year, more than twice that of some other breeds. Daniel Hale's cows produce just 4,000 litres a year, but with higher milk fat and protein. These cows are in the bulk milk business. Their milk is not great for cheese making. and they're fed supplements to keep them going. Lately, things have not gone well for Zhangfang Lu and Moon Lake Investments. In 2021, it was issued with environmental protection notices and had its operating license suspended. It then sold off 11 farms and 5,000 cows for $62.5 million. In that same year, they sold another 6,000 hectares to a beef producer. As agriculture businesses go, dairy can be tough. In 2024, the big dairy processor, Fonterra, cancelled Van Dairy's 25 million litre milk contract. They said it was because of unresolvable commercial factors. Following this, Van Dairy sent 600 healthy milkers to the meatworks.
I think this, as consumers, is what we would expect when we're buying dairy products, that the animal has had a good life and that the animal has been treated with respect.
How do you think your way of farming compares with the big industrial dairy farmers?
I think ours definitely has a lesser impact on the environment and the surrounds and the animals and that sort of thing. I also do see a side of the industrial agriculture. I don't think it's a perfect world, but I think they both need to coexist alongside each other for the whole system to work generally. With cost of living going up so much, there's only so much excess money people have to spend each week to feed their family, and not everyone can afford the $5 a litre on milk. They need to pay $1.50 a litre.
And so sadly, it is the dollar that makes the world go round. But in the artisan cheese business, people are often blinded by their passion for making something more beautiful than a dollar. This is the only raw milk cheese operation in South Australia, called Section 28. It is tiny, run by a couple from the big end of town, Kim and Joanne Masters. Kim was a fund operator who got caught up in the global financial crisis. He cleared his debts and took the family to Italy.
Well, the reason I left banking is I didn't feel like I had a connection to a real purpose. And it's about making, usually as in an advisory context, you're making money for your clients. But for me, that didn't feel like I was actually creating anything tangible. You know, I had quite a successful career in banking, but I don't think you ever saw me smile talking about what I was doing in the same way I smile when I talk about Section 28.
They set up in a couple of containers up behind Adelaide in the hills. Recently, they moved into a flash new tin shed in what they hope will be the first of many tin sheds as the company grows. They make Alpine-style cheeses, 10 of them all up, but some are seasonal, some are raw milk, all of them are pretty smart. They all comply with the ZANS and the South Australian regulations, but it hasn't always been easy.
How important in terms of your cheese making is the being able to use raw milk?
Yeah, it's fundamental to what we do. So I think we're in the fortunate position that the type of cheeses we choose to make suit the standards for raw milk cheese making. Now, the other aspect I'd say is that our clientele, the people who buy our cheese ultimately are chefs, and they are ruthless in terms of quality. So we have to maintain a level of quality that's far in excess of what would be minimum compliance standard, and that is what we're committed to.
And what would that cost of testing be?
It's actually more the development cost than the actual ongoing cost. So for us, it takes about $10,000 over 18 months to develop a cheese. A raw milk, we estimated was about $25,000, and it takes the same 18 months. So it's a lot longer to get your payback. And then you've got an ongoing, probably a 100% increase in your ongoing testing cost.
When you look at the cost of testing in Australia, how do you feel about the regulations in Australia?
I don't compare the cost of testing because it's depressing in Europe. I think there is the opportunity for science to take more of a non-emotive conversation and science to actually dictate what decisions should be made. I mean, a good example is we make a washed rind, soft ripen. That's the most risky cheese we make, but it's pasteurised milk. And so from a regulatory perspective, it's regarded as being low risk. But I know, and you'd know, I know as a cheesemaker, and you know as a cheesemonger, that that is the most risky cheese because it's a petri dish for pathogens if pathogens get in. Whereas some of our raw milk cheeses are, there's never risk-free, but they're very low risk because they've been aged so long. You know, Monforte's aged for 12 months, and so the chances of there being a particular pathogenic bacteria able to live that long in the environment we keep it is very low.
So here's the conundrum. Your raw milk cheeses don't keep you awake at night.
Yep.
You make a soft, pasteurised milk cheese, and that's the one that gives you nightmares.
Yeah, 100%. There's an element of real satisfaction, vulnerability as well, because every time you put a piece of cheese on the plate, you're saying, there's a little bit of me that I hope you like, please like me. But also when someone says that's amazing, there's a real satisfaction.
So these are three of our cheeses, Will. Our Monforte, which is our flagship, Alpine semi-hard raw milk, 12 months old.
Yeah.
Montprisilla, which has got a line of ash through the middle. A lot of people freak out and think it's a blue, but it's got a line of ash. That's pasteurised. And our last one, which is probably the dark horse of Section 28, is our La Sriracha, which is a Fontina Vecchio style raw milk, about 6 months old. This is the one that we started making cheese. I started making cheese because of the abondance, and this is a version of that. So let's try that one first.
Fantastic packaging.
Thank you.
I love the fact you've got all this round the rind.
Yeah, so that is, and again, nothing new in the world, but we love the way the Italian Fontina and also Asiago are packaged up. So.
Yeah, no, that's clever. Smells fruity.
Should get a little bit, so we try and release this when there's a really nice balance between the paddock and the cave. So you should get a little bit of fruitiness, a little bit of lactic on the front palate when you taste it, and then you get an umami flavour, but it's not a really big, beefy, brothy umami. It should be almost roast chicken skin, roast hazelnut flavour at the back.
Right.
So it should be fresh.
Chicken skin?
No, the roast chicken skin. The skin of roast chicken. If you get a really nicely roasted chicken, you pull the skin off it, it's divine. That's the caramel flavour I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's the way my mum used to make it anyway.
That's great. Really good.
Thank you.
It's really lovely. I'm looking at this, and it's got these little tiny holes in.
Yep. They'd be eating fresh grass at this point. So they'd be into the early spring fresh grass. And we see maximum amount of carbon dioxide or holes coming through. Taste is about memory, and we've all got different memories, so we're all going to taste different things. So
I reckon this is a blinding cheese. Really, really, really lovely. And how does it melt? Does it melt like a fontaine?
Like a fontaine, beautifully. So imagine it. So quite often I've seen chefs shave it over roast broccoli or broccolini or something like that, or even just in a
toasty.
A toasty, cheese toasty, with a really nice sourdough bread. That style of cheese is not well understood in Australia. And then our last one, those two are both raw milk, and our last one is our Montprisilla. So this one is probably, we say it's a taste of the Adelaide Hills in summertime. It's our most subtle, but also our most complex cheese.
I like that. I like that higher moisture. That's good.
Yeah. You've still got that bit of lactic on the front palate.
Mm.
So you still get that real sense of milk and place. A little bit of fresh grass or dry grass coming through mid-palate. And then sort of towards the end you get a butteriness, but almost a citrus note right at the very end as well.
It does have a clean mouthfeel.
What I find with all of our pasteurised cheeses, in fact, is you get an initial flavour spike, but it drops off really quickly. You don't get that depth and length. Whereas if you chose to, not many people do, but if you chose to, after 5 minutes of eating a Monforte or the La Sriracha, the flavour will still be developing in
Still
there.
That is why.
That's raw milk. That's the difference for us,
There can be no doubting Kim Master's passion for what he does, or the lengths he will go to achieve it. So what does this man think about being allowed to import and eat cheese that he's not allowed to make here?
It doesn't seem right and fair to me. I understand in the context of regulation. So a regulator only gets hauled up in front of a Senate committee if someone's died. So from a regulator's perspective, I understand their position is always going to be inherently conservative because they don't get patted on the back for taking risk. But if they take risk and it fails, they get strung up.
And there it is. The raw milk argument is and will be won not by flavour or the traditional practices in other places. Not by the appetite for cheese or free trade agreements, but by the appetite for risk. So Australia is a new world, where the old world is not always welcome. A place where world-class cheesemakers can eat imported cheese that they're prohibited from making. In many ways, it's big government versus small cheese. Something I never thought would ever happen in a country that prides itself as the land of the fair go.